All right. I'd like to call to order the February 16th, 2021 meeting of the Architectural Review Board. Ms. McDonald, will you please call the roll?
Patty Cross. Patty Cross.
Here I am.
Thank you. Irma Johnson.
Yeah.
Brittany Sams.
Here.
Jennifer Oberlin.
Here.
Kevin Breek.
Here.
Nicole Conkle.
Here.
We have a quorum of 6. I think that's the most I've ever seen.
Okay. Has everyone had an opportunity to look over the minutes from the last meeting? Does anybody have any questions or comments regarding the minutes? Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Is there any new business from staff before we begin design review?
No.
Well, I would like to say welcome to Ms. Berenberg, and thank you for hitting the ground running. And we are very, very glad to have you here. I'm sure everybody is aware at this point we have a new historic preservation officer. So welcome, Ms. Berenberg.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to provide a brief chair's report for this month as new business and continue this monthly as needed. Since our last meeting, I have requested a immediate appointment of a 7th board member via email with Mayor Wilkerson. I've corresponded with the Historic Preservation Officer regarding the general direction of the preservationist position and how it relates to the board. I've corresponded with Planning Department staff regarding agendas and past notes on agendas. I met with our attorney with questions regarding communication and parliamentary procedure, and reviewed the 2020 CLG annual report with Planning Department staff and the new HPO. I've also made some appointments and sat in on some other Historic Preservation Review Board meetings and watched Lexington's board reviews. They have past meetings available on YouTube if anyone else is interested. I'm happy to share that information with y'all. I've also looked over the Cultural Historic Technical Report and attended the consulting parties meeting for the West Broadway Bridge and requested consulting party status for the board. All right. Are we ready to move forward with the first review? Ms. McDonald?
In accordance with Articles 4 and 17 of the City of Frankfurt zoning ordinance, Mary Quinnan Smith is requesting a certificate of appropriateness to replace the existing windows on the rear porch addition and frame in the remaining openings for the property located at 513 Logan Street. The property is more particularly identified as PVA map number 062-32-05-012.00.
Mr. Miller?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Hope you're doing well. Jordan Miller, City of Frankfurt, Planning and Community Development. I'm going to share my screen with you and give you a short run through here of what Dawn just described. Host disabled participant screening. Let's see. I may not be able to share my screen with you right now because I made Zach the host. Okay, plant board. All right. First, I'll start with the site plan then. If you want to start with me on page 3 of the staff report for 513 Logan Street, you'll notice the site plan. So 513 Logan has the primary facade, main entrance is along Logan Street. There's a service alley that runs behind it called Stanley Street, which has the rear elevation where the applicant is proposing to replace some windows on a second-story porch. It's kind of like a sleeping porch, is what we would traditionally describe it as. So there are 4 windows on the front facade of the sleeping porch that the applicant would like to replace, and then on the sides of that sleeping porch, there are 2 windows that the applicant would like to replace with 1 window. And due to the irregular sizes of the windows that are in there, they will have to frame in some remaining space on the front facade of that rear facade, if I'm not confusing you too much, in the middle between the 2 windows, and then on the sides of that sleeping porch, where they were replacing it with 1 window in lieu of the 2, they'll also frame that in closer to the house in that area. So the windows come down about probably 2/3 of the way down to what the floor would be, what you see from the exterior. You're kind of thinking a 3D cut view. And that is covered with beadboard. So that is what they would like to cover that exterior with to match the existing. Now, they're proposing vinyl windows to replace them with. The front elevation of the primary structure, as well as the sides, the windows have already been replaced with vinyl, so those are not the original windows. We looked for Sanborn maps to see if that sleeping porch is original to the structure when it was constructed. We weren't able to find those in time. The earliest Sanborn maps we could find were 1925 or 1922, I believe, in that time period, and the structure wasn't constructed yet at the time of those Sanborn maps. So I've chatted.
Sorry, Jordan. I just wanted to say, I think it was 1912. That's the latest Sanborn map we have.
1912. Okay, there you go. Yeah, me and Vicki chatted about this. So back then, that was just one large lot with just a large structure on it. It's been subdivided up since then. So we weren't able to tell if that was original or not, but we're trying to work on completing or getting more robust collection of Sanborn maps in our possession in the future. But if you'll look at my findings, I had a kind of a mixed bag of findings, but ultimately I suggested approval of the request. And I don't know if Vicki has anything else to add. She can add anything to it if she'd like, of course. But I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Yeah. You said they're proposing vinyl?
Yes.
Because in the paperwork, it looks like there was proposed wood.
In the paperwork, can you clarify where?
In the staff
Line
report.
item
Is that a
6.
suggestion or was that line item 6 on page 2.
Right now?
No, the new one.
No, that we aluminum on the outside.
The windows proposed to be replaced are wood. So the existing windows that are proposed to be replaced are wood.
Okay.
And the windows that will, yeah, that is a little confusing. The windows proposed to be replaced with are wood or vinyl, if that makes sense.
Is there any other questions for staff from the board? I have one question, Mr. Miller.
Yeah.
In our information, the survey form does mention an original porch. So we're assuming that's the front porch, not the rear porch towards Stanley Street, or do we know which porch this survey form attached is referring to specifically in the distinguishing characteristics list?
I can't say for certain.
Okay, thank you. Does the board have any further questions for staff?
I have a quick question, Jordan. So have they already roughed in the window that they're trying to replace? I'm looking at two different pictures, and one picture looks like a window has been changed on that sleeping porch.
I'm looking at the photos right now. Which photo are you looking at? Is there a page number to it?
Okay, I'm looking at page 10. I'm looking, and I assume that that's from Stanley Street. And then I'm turning the page to, it doesn't have a number on it, to the application. And I'm seeing another photograph with a single window. And I don't know, it looks pretty, it doesn't look like it's a drawing. It looks more like a photograph. And it has a single window showing. So I was just saying, is it a different elevation than the one I'm looking at?
Nothing has been framed in. Nothing's being requested after the fact.
Okay.
It may be that on page 10, you're seeing kind of, it sits back from Stanley Street about 200 feet. So that picture on page 10 may be kind of playing with the grills. You're not seeing those dividers.
I see. Okay, that's probably what it is.
Yeah, that might be what you're saying.
If I may add, I think maybe there are screens in the pictures that you see, and on some of the windows, and some of the windows in the pictures do not show the screen. So the differences there just might be to a lack of a screen.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Are there any other questions for staff? Okay. Ms. Keenan, can you hear us?
Yes,
Am I pronouncing your name correctly?
it's Quinnen.
Quinnen, Ms. Quinnen.
Yes.
Welcome.
Well,
Have you had a chance to read the staff report, and are you in agreement with everything as stated, including the staff suggestions and conditions on page 2?
yes, I have read it, and I am in agreement. And in the photographs that you was just talking about, there are screens on some windows, but not all of them.
Is there anything else that you would like to point out to the board, or any important details you want to express about your proposal?
I think Jordan covered it pretty well, but two of the reasons that we want to replace the windows is they're not weather tight, so it's not usable year round, and the current windows open inward, which makes the space really unusable. They're just glass frames on hinges.
Okay. Do any members of the boards have questions for the applicant?
Would you describe the area as more of like a sun porch as opposed to a, is that what it pretty much is, like a 3-season sun porch?
Yeah, it was probably originally a sleeping porch for hot weather, so.
Gotcha.
Anyone else have any questions? Okay, do we have a motion? Anyone? I just realized, have we lost Miss Patty, Miss Cross?
Yes, she texted me. She's lost her internet connection and she's going to try to hotspot in, but we still have a quorum even without her.
Oh, okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
This is Jennifer Oberlin. I'll make a motion. A motion that we issue a certificate of appropriateness to replace the existing windows on the rear porch addition and frame for the property located at 513 Logan Street, incorporating the two staff suggestions, which state a building permit should be obtained prior to commencing work on the project, and any additional projects requiring a building permit shall require review and approval by the ARB unless a certificate of no exterior effect is issued.
I second that.
Okay.
You ready for me to call the roll?
No, is there any discussion from the board members, please?
Is this just, Ms. Conkle, is this just where we can provide some general comments?
Yes, before we call for a vote.
Okay, and am I allowed to address them to the applicant, or would they only be addressed to board members?
I would imagine all of us, since everybody's
Yeah.
going to see and hear it. Mr. Logan?
Generally, this is a discussion among the staff. If we want any questions of the applicant, we got to do that as soon as they finish testifying. But if she's willing to answer those questions, we have a motion on the floor. As we can only discuss the motion unless it's going to be altered.
Okay, they're not questions necessarily. It was just a comment that I wanted to make.
Certainly, you can make a comment during discussion.
Okay, I was just going to say the applicant did include the quote and the estimate for the replacement from the contractor that's going to be doing the work. And given that they are like historic windows and wood windows, and the price of the quote that you were given, you might want to look into somebody repairing them and just seeing what quote you get from somebody who would repair the original wooden ones. Given that they are on the rear of the house and they're not facing the street, I mean, I'm not going to make a motion to not have them be replaced, I guess I would say, but it might be worth just also looking into having somebody repair the original ones and seeing if you can get a competitive price. So I hope that was an okay quote to make, or an okay comment to make. But.
Certainly.
Is there any other discussion? I have a question for parliamentary procedure. Do we need to call the question and have that as a motion in a second before we actually take the vote, Mr. Logan?
No, I think at this point in time, there's been a motion made. Has there been a second of that motion?
Yes.
Then we can call the question and vote on it.
Great. All right, Ms. McDonald, will you call the roll, please?
Ms. Oberlin,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Brink,
Yes.
Ms. Sams,
Yes.
is Ms. Cross back with us yet? Ms. Conkle,
Yes.
motion carries.
Before we move on to the next line item, Ms. Sams, would you like to recuse yourself from this review? Okay, just so everyone is aware, since she is the applicant, Ms. Sams will not be voting on this item.
We need Patty, don't we?
What I was going to say, without Brittany, do we need Patty to have quorum?
I don't think so.
No, we
Have
have 4.
Or, okay, sorry, thank you.
Thank you. All right, Ms. McDonald, the next review item, please.
In accordance with Articles 4 and 17 of the City of Frankfurt zoning ordinance, Brittany Sams is requesting a certificate of appropriateness to replace a window on the front facade for the property located at 601 Briarcliff Street. The property is more particularly identified as PVA map number 062-32-10-004.00.
So 601 Briarcliff, that is located along the corner of East Todd Street, right before you go around that sharp turn there on East Todd. It's the first house on Briarcliff on the left. So the applicant, it's Tudor Revival style of stylistic influence. The applicant would like to replace a window on the front elevation of the structure, the primary elevation, excuse me. Second story. It's been previously altered by a prior property owner. And the applicant would like to replace the window with a custom-made, hand-built window that more accurately reflects the Tudor Revival style of the house. If you look on your staff report on page 5, you'll see that the front door has the pattern of glass that the applicant is proposing for that window.
You went to the bedroom.
And then if you also look in your attachments, the applicant has included a couple of drawings with 2 different types of diamond pattern proposed. And I believe the applicant would like just a little bit of input from the board if they have any preference on the 2 different types of patterns. But staff is okay with either one. So this window has been previously enlarged by a prior property owner, so the opening is different than what it originally used to be. There's issues from the improper materials and poor construction from that replacement window that has resulted in a little bit of deterioration of the wood around the sill area, I believe, from the applicant. So we suggested approval with a few conditions. There are a few suggested findings of facts as well, I believe 5, that we're recommending to the board. So I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Are there any questions from the board for staff? Ms. Sams, have you read the staff report and are you in agreement with everything as stated, including staff suggestions and conditions on page 2?
Yes.
Do you have anything else you would like us to know or important details you want to point out about your proposal?
I did include a letter that has kind of explained the situation. So if everyone has read that, then I don't think that there's anything else that I could provide, any other information.
Are there any questions for the applicant from the board? Do we have a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the applicant's certificate of appropriateness in accordance with Articles 4 and 17 to replace a window on the front facade of the property located at 601 Briarcliff Street with the 2 suggestions that staff has included.
We have a second. Oh,
I will
sorry.
second.
Great, thank you, Mr. Reed. Is there any discussion from the board?
I just want to tell the applicant, really like the window replacement that they've chosen.
Bear with me 1 second, please. All right, Ms. McDonald, can you call the roll, please?
Ms. Oberlin,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson,
Yes.
Mr. Brink,
Yes.
Ms. Conkle,
Yes.
and Ms. Cross is not back, correct? Perfect. Motion carries.
Here I am.
Patty's there.
Ms. Cross, did you hear any of that?
I did. I heard the whole thing.
Great. Would you like to vote, yes or no?
I'll vote yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Thanks to both of the applicants for your investment in Frankfurt. All right. Ms. Sams, would you like to join us as a board member again?
Yes.
This is a little awkward doing this on video, so not really sure how it's to point that out. So are we ready then to move on to the next item, discussing our work plans? Right, Mr. Miller, if you would you please give us an update on where we stand on completion of last year's work plan objectives?
Sure. Yeah, no problem. I'll go through these objectives. There were 9 in total. So I'll start with objective 1, which was to update the special capital zoning district guidelines. Special capitals are South Frankfurt district, as many of you know. And at this, well, let me just go through them one by one, and I'll tell you what we've completed and what we haven't.
Great, thank you.
Objective 2, make historic survey forms available online on the city website. Objective 3 was Robert's Rules training for Architectural Review Board members. Objective 4, consider new historic landmarks and/or districts. Objective 5, preserve, enhance, and reflect the historic pavements and curbing in our historic districts. Objective 6 was a preservation workshop in 2020. Objective 7, notify real estate and new property owners in historic districts. Objective 8, conduct monthly reviews of applications with Frankfurt's historic districts that are not staff approved. And then objective 9 was presentation of the annual report or biannual reports made to the BOC, the Board of Commissioners, by a member of the ARB in a public forum. So, of these objectives, we have completed objective 3. In a way, we did the camp training. It wasn't exactly a Robert's Rules training for ARB members, but it was that you all participated in. I'm sure you know it was a type of training. Meeting procedures were briefly covered in that. Objective 4, consider new historic landmarks or districts. This is something that the ARB did not necessarily do, but the BOC, the Board of Commissioners, did with the Fort Hill request. Objective 6, preservation and workshop in 2020. We did receive a grant from the State Historic Preservation Office to conduct a preservation workshop with Bob Yap in 2020. However, due to COVID, it was postponed multiple times. And so we're working with SHPO, Vicki and I, to find another way to use that money that we've received from SHPO in a different way, because it's probably not looking like we're going to be able to do that this year either due to the pandemic. Sorry, Siri popped up. Notify real estate and new property owners in historic districts. Yes, staff has been doing that quarterly. Each year we have a relationship with the PVA office where we get new property owners mailing information and send them info whenever property transfers do happen. And we have heard back from property owners who have been contacted by us, so that it has been productive so far. And then objective 9, I believe Nicole before pandemic, may have made a report to the Board of Commissioners. I'm not sure. Is that true or not? Presentation to the BOC by members of ARB in a public forum. I don't know if we did that before pandemic or not. No? Okay. So we have a few that we did.
Nicole, you're muted.
Thank you, Ms. Oberlin. I did not. Ms. Cross may have, though.
Okay.
It was.
Okay. I don't think we made any last year, though. Last year was a strange year. So I'm happy I did send you all the CLG agreement from the early 80s that the city did go into agreement with the State Historic Preservation Office. It's just something for you guys to reflect on as you consider what this year's working plan may be going forward. So I think we should open this up to discussion and see what you guys think and what you'd like to add. And I think maybe we can kind of chat about what you'd like to see on it, then maybe bring it back to you in March to approve, or whatever you all think is most efficient, whatever you'd like to do. So,
thank you, Mr. Miller.
no problem.
I would like to mention, although I do not recall the specifics of it before we go further into the discussion for the work plan, that my interest in including the CLG document is, this board is sort of supposed to facilitate the city's obligations, as we all know. But I think that the Board of Commissioners currently has slated some of the CLG obligations on their list. Mr. Miller or Ms. Berenberg, do you guys remember or know the specifics of that? What other CLG obligations other boards or other staff members are working on currently?
Are you talking about responsibilities or grants, or both?
Both, so that we could be fully aware as we consider next year's work plan to know what other moving parts there are.
Okay. Jordan, do you want me to jump in here a little bit? Feel comfortable with that? Yes? Okay. I'm going to grab the CLG agreement, which I did copy. I can't find it. One thing y'all should remember is that, yes, you are the board. You are the board with the primary responsibility for identifying, evaluating, and protecting the cultural and historic resources in Frankfurt, yes. But it's not the board alone that is designated as a certified local government. It's the city as a whole. So there might be a lot of responsibilities on that agreement, but you shouldn't feel like you personally as a board have to address every single one of those things. And again, I don't have it right in front of me, but I should know it by heart at this point. But there are responsibilities to, and some of these are included in your powers and duties in Article 17, right? To be a liaison, interest of, oh, wait, here we go, found it. Okay, so the responsibilities of the city of Frankfurt include to conduct or cause to be conducted a continuing survey of cultural resources in the community. I think this board is probably the good body to be thinking about that. There hasn't really been any survey work initiated in the city of Frankfurt in quite a long time. I think actually the last time it happened might have been around 2008. That was before I actually lived here. And it happened, I believe, as part of the kind of pre-work required to get that Central Frankfurt Historic District designated on the National Register of Historic Places.
So Ms. Beerenberg, if I could jump in real quick.
Sure.
Isn't the Board of Commissioners has already started moving on having some survey done in the city, correct?
I am not sure about that. I think the previous board was interested in doing some survey associated with resources that are tied to Frankfurt's African American heritage, and also developing a historic context document so that we have something, a framework by which we could evaluate those resources. And I have done a little bit of digging and research gathering in the interim period since that decision was initiated. And I think it's going to be expensive the way they kind of designed it. And I think developing the historic context is the more important piece initially.
Okay.
And so it was my recommendation that they kind of drop the survey portion and leave that for a later phase. And that is actually on the agenda for the upcoming Board of Commissioners meeting at the end of this month, which is next week, I believe. There is an upcoming CLG grant deadline on March 5th. And given the timing of all of these changes and transitions, you all didn't get a lot of opportunity to participate in, you know, those recommendations for what Frankfurt's historic preservation program should be focusing on grant-wise.
Does Frankfurt have grants?
There is one open grant, and that was to do the workshop that Jordan mentioned. And you know, the city was working with contracting with Bob Yap, who's a very, very well-respected historic preservation professional, nationally known. He's been to Frankfurt before, and he's done some very successful workshops. He's popular, but it's just so difficult right now with COVID. And to do a workshop in a virtual format, we kind of all feel, I think, that it would not be as impactful as doing something hands-on. He's a very hands-on kind of guy. So it was my recommendation that we move that money, which is a $6,600 grant plus the match, which is $11,000, to developing a National Register nomination for the Waterworks and Water Tower site at Cove Spring Park. Our Parks Department has purview and responsibility over some of Frankfurt's historic resources that are city-owned. And it's going to be my role to assist them with that process, just like I'm working with you all on your roles. It was my recommendation to do that because right now park staff seems to be, it seems like they would like some guidance in the form of an actual document that they can use going forward to determine the best way to care for that property. It's had some recent damage because there have been visitors to the park that have been climbing on the water tower itself, and it needs some attention due to some damage to the masonry. And it was my thought that if we can get it designated Well, first of all, that's just a really great idea because it kind of raises the profile of the site in the community and helps to educate everyone as to why that is important. But in addition to that, it opens up the opportunities for some potential grant funding to help with the development of these reports and guidance documents that would help to care for the resource going forward. Also, it's a project that I think we could execute in the very short amount of time left for that grant. It needs to be wrapped up by August 1st. And I think a large survey project would not be a good idea to undertake in a very short window of time. But this particular nomination for one resource was a better fit for the time and for the funding. And so that's why it was my recommendation to move it to that project. And that is also on the believe consent agenda for Monday's meeting with the Board of Commissioners. So that's the open grant. We're going to ask for permission to reapply for the workshop. So you all will have the opportunity to host that for the community, but you'll have a new timeline that will start on July 1 and go until August 1 of 2022, where more people will be vaccinated and it's much more likely we can do an in-person event. And then, because we can submit more than one grant application, and because I know that the Heritage Council likes to see that, they like to have a large variety of projects to look at and evaluate. It was my recommendation to do this historic context for African American resources in this grant cycle as well. So that would be in addition to the workshop. But that's more expensive than $11,000. It might be more like a $20,000, $25,000 project. Just because it requires whomever we hire as the consultant to do a lot of on-the-ground and in-person work with the community, kind of building trust and learning from individuals directly, in addition to doing, documentation and research. So I'm talking a lot. Do any of you all have any questions?
I would like to ask you one more question, just to very succinctly make my own bullet list of notes here. So if I realize that, as you mentioned, these are on future Board of Commissioner agendas. So if everything goes as expected, as previously discussed, what would the timeline for those specific items you just mentioned to us be for completion, the chronological timeline?
The National Register nomination for the waterworks site would have to be completed by August 1st. We're actually going to request that it be completed by July 1st, because that will allow it to be put on the agenda for the State Review Board meeting in the fall, and we could possibly get it approved by the Park Service by the end of the year.
Wow.
So that would be the timeline for that. Okay. The other two grants are just ideas at this point. They haven't been awarded. We're going to apply for them. I've talked with Eric and Jordan and Rebecca Hall. The deadline to apply is March 5th, which is coming up really soon. We won't hear back until probably June. And then again, the timeline will probably start sometime in July, and we will have until August 1st of 2022 to execute those projects. And then there will be a new opportunity to think about projects starting in mid-November. And I would hope we could bring the the discussion to you all then, so that you have at least one meeting, maybe more, to kind of talk about ideas for what you would recommend Frankfurt apply for.
Thank you. We would appreciate that. Okay, and I hope I didn't put you too much on the spot. We have several new board members, and I needed a very good refresher on what's been going on, what we have accomplished, what we can accomplish, and all the moving parts for the board and the city as we look at our work plan moving forward. So thank you. I hope I didn't.
I will say you all put together a very ambitious work plan last year. So you did get some of it accomplished, and I think you should feel good about that.
Thank you. All right, headed back to the work plan. Is there any comment or question from the board? Ms. Oberlin?
Yeah, so my question is following up on these grant discussions. Is it customary, or would it be something that we as a board decide we want to do? Do we want to make recommendations that we approve with these suggestions to the Board of Commissioners for the Tuesday meeting? Or certainly the one with the grant that we kind of need to spend the money for quickly?
I don't think it would hurt. Does another board member want to jump in before I start running away with conversation here? I would be happy to draft something if you like in support of that, or.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
isn't Vicki going to make the recommendation? I think it would be appropriate for us to simply say we support her recommendation with regard to that. I don't know that it takes a formal vote, but certainly the chair could submit a letter to the Board of Commissioners supporting Vicki's recommendation and asking that that be prioritized.
Okay. I'm happy to do that.
I'm not exactly sure that, Rebecca Hall is the grants manager, and I think she's actually the one who's taking it to the board.
Would you suggest we send a letter to her in support?
I mean, I think you could send a letter to the board and in support of Rebecca's recommendations.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Ms. Krause?
May I ask if, do we know exactly what Ms. Hall's recommendations are going to be? Would they mirror perhaps what Ms. Sternberg's recommendations are?
Yes.
So
Yes.
It wouldn't be out of the ordinary to say yes, we support Ms. Hall's recommendations.
Yes, Eric and Jordan and Rebecca and I all concurred before we moved to put it on the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
And any correspondence, I will copy all the relevant city staff as it goes out. And I believe I'm accurate in saying that as well as sending it to the board, I can copy Ms. Copley, or Mr. Copley, Mr. Miller, and Ms. Berenberg, and Ms. Hall, and draft in the letter in support of her recommendation.
I should mention one other thing to you all with regard to Cove Spring. If you're going to ever put something on the National Register, the first step is to get a determination of eligibility from the State Historic Preservation Office. I have initiated that process for the site. We can move forward with the nomination until we get an affirmative determination from them. I suppose there is a possibility that we may not get it, in which case we'll have to have a discussion about moving that money again. I personally feel like the site is eligible. It has been determined eligible in the past under a couple of different scenarios. One as part of a group of like resources across the state. It's also been determined possibly eligible as an archaeological site under a separate survey. So I would be surprised if we got word back that it's not eligible. But I would like to try to get it listed individually, not as part of a group, for local significance.
I think it would be a great idea to support that as far as it goes, and hope for the best, and just continue to check in on it as this situation progresses. We apologize for the technical difficulties in the live feed. The meeting started shortly after 5 o'clock. So the first or the two design review items were voted on. The first one being in accordance with Articles 4 and 17 of the City of Frankfurt zoning ordinance, Mary Keenan Smith is requesting a certificate of appropriateness to replace the existing windows on the rear porch addition and frame in the remaining openings for the property located at 513 Logan Street. The property is more particularly identified as PVA map number 06232050012. The board voted unanimously 6-0 to approve the certificate of appropriateness. For the second review items, board member Brittany Sams recused herself as she is an applicant. That review item was in accordance with Articles 4 and 17 of the City of Frankfurt zoning ordinance. Brittany Sams is requesting a certificate of appropriateness to replace a window on the front facade for the property located at 601 Briarcliff Street. The property is more particularly identified as PVA map number 06232100004. The board voted 5-0 to approve the application. We had just begun discussion of the annual work plan and gotten an update from the staff over what our very lofty goals from the 2020 work plans were, and what other activities are going on that are preservation related in the city as a whole. Again, we apologize to the public for we did not realize we were not streaming live due to technical difficulties.
Yeah, and we can hopefully we can be able to post that live on post that recording on Facebook in the next coming days of what was done earlier as well.
Okay. Good.
Heading back to our discussion of the work plan, I think that if it's agreeable, we should go ahead and read the citizens' comment as it pertains to vinyl siding in the special capital district. Would you like me to read that letter?
Nicole, you can read it obviously, but make sure we put the exact letter into the record.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
This letter is from Michael and Angela Fitzpatrick, residents of the Special Capital Historic District. In January of 2017, my wife and I bought a house in downtown Frankfurt. As with most homes in South Frankfurt, we were well aware that our house would need a tremendous amount of work, and we were prepared and excited to completely restore this home to its original state. Starting in June of 2017, a renovation began that included the removal of all vinyl siding. Once that process started, we soon discovered why the siding was installed in the first place. Extensive rot, dangerous and inappropriate interior electrical wiring exposed. Most of the original shutters were thrown away, and most disturbing was the intentional removal of specific architectural aspects that were removed simply for ease of the vinyl installation. every single vertical board at each corner, which consists of 2 each at these corners. I'm sorry, I do not have a way to share the pictures with us right now. Were removed and discarded, and most window trim drip caps were sawed off to create a flat surface again for ease for the vinyl installation. All of this removal was of, quote, old growth timber that cannot be replaced. This was also a tremendous expense and, of course, added much time to our renovation. None of these problems could have been known by us or the individual who did the initial inspection. And although this home had many obvious issues, there was no way of knowing what the vinyl siding was hiding by anyone other than the previous owner or installer. I normally do not want more governmental oversight for homeowners, but some rules and or ordinances must be enacted that require a homeowner to have some sort of inspection prior to the application of vinyl siding. From a historic perspective, this obviously makes sense, but it is also for safety. One of the photos attached shows interior wiring, not just exposed, but deliberately wired outside the original siding, again, hidden by the vinyl siding. I urge all of you to figure out a check and balance for those who choose to add vinyl siding to their homes in the historic districts. Note, once the shutters were discarded to the curb, another lover of historic preservation actually saved those shutters and contacted me. When he saw our preservation project in progress, he returned those shutters. It's the end of the citizen's comment.
Nicole, are you seeing that Eric has put up?
I am seeing the pictures on my screen.
Yeah.
The public should be able to see. Are there any members of the board that wish to comment on this? All right. Well, I'll just state for the record that I believe that the Fitzpatrick concerns fall beyond the purview of this board. But maybe, however, since one of the past objectives in the work plan has to do with beginning the process of drafting new guidelines for the special capital district, perhaps we could keep this in mind, or Mr. Fitzpatrick could comment as part of the public commenting process for the establishment of new design guidelines, should that move forward in the work plan.
Nicole, I think that this is a really good example of an issue that needs to be addressed. I would reiterate that previously the Architectural Review Board would not grant any vinyl siding or fences, and the city enacted an ordinance which allowed it that actually overrode what we were doing. So this is something I think that needs to be done by ordinance to make sure we have the authority in the future to look into some items like this.
Thank you, Mr. Logan.
Thank you.
Do any board members want to speak to the work plan for this year, moving forward at this time? Okay, I don't see any hands up, so I propose that we use our unmet obligations from the previous year's work plan, and we look at those and use them as a template for this year's, and consider the city's overall CLG obligations for kind of an outline for what we might help partner and facilitate, and then once we have a better idea of what other city staff and boards are doing to meet some shared obligations, we can consider all those things together. So I would like to call a special meeting of the board 2 weeks from tonight that's March 2nd at 5 p.m. Ms. Barrett, sorry, Ms. McDonald, do you have your hand up? You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Typically, the first Tuesday of the month is BZA. The last few months, that has fallen on the second Tuesday of the month, and I was actually going to ask Jordan about that, but since you're trying to, or hoping to schedule on that day, I just didn't want there to be a conflict, because I am a secretary for both boards.
I am going to be out of town, out of state on the 2nd. Okay.
Okay.
Let me look at the meeting calendar as well.
Of course, we may not be streaming live anyway then, Madam Chair.
How so? You think that we'll be back in person by then?
No, I think we might have problems again then.
Oh, no. No, don't say that.
Ed, if we weren't live streaming. All right, DZA meets March 9th. Ed, are you gone that entire week?
I'm gone the entire week of the 2nd. I will be back for the meeting on the 9th.
Okay. We could do the Thursday on March 11th. You guys meet on March 16th as a regular meeting, and there are items to bring to you.
Okay, March 11th. March 11th.
Is that
There's
plan?
no-
That planning and zoning?
Yeah, good point. Let me look.
I think that's planning and zoning.
I think so also.
And we need a week's public notice under statute of the.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, March 11th is Planning Commission. That is correct, Ed.
What about February 25th, which is a Thursday at 5 p.m.? Is there anything scheduled for that?
Next Thursday, we could get that. If I advertise tomorrow, I could get that.
Are there any other members of the board or Mr. Logan that know?
That day. I don't know about the board members.
Jordan, for clarification, Code Enforcement Board is on that Tuesday, the 23rd, correct?
I believe so. Yes.
I just didn't want to have another conflict. I think it's Tuesday, so Thursday, the 25th would work.
It is.
We need a 1 week advertisement, correct, Ed?
Yeah.
1 week, 7 days. I can't get it. Tomorrow's Wednesday. They won't be able to do that quick of a turnaround at the State Journal.
Okay. Monday, the 1st.
I'm that whole week. That doesn't help me at all.
Oh, that's right.
What about the?
Forgive me, but what is the purpose of the special meeting?
I want to call a special meeting for 2 reasons. We've gotten a lot of information on other moving parts that deal with preservation in the city. We're looking at our 2021 work plan that we need to finalize. So I was hoping to set up some time to discuss that. And as well, Ms. Berenberg has agreed to give us a 20-minute tutorial in specific specific aspects of design review. So I would like to do all of those things. It shouldn't take more than an hour.
Well, I guess I'm just asking because is it something that has to be done before our March meeting, and could it not come after it when maybe schedules are not quite as hectic and it'd be easier to manipulate between all the other meetings that have to be Zoomed? And
the
only other date I see is March 10th.
March 10th.
It's a Wednesday.
I'm good with that day.
Mr. Logan.
Wait 1 second.
Okay, and back to your question, Ms. Cross. The reason why I would rather do it before our next meeting is so that we have time to process that information, as all the members of the board can consider it, in greater detail based on coming back with timelines and input from our special meeting whenever we get this set. And we have grant deadlines coming up. So I would just prefer to have, by our next meeting, be able to approve the 2021 work plan, because we'll be 3 months in. And typically, I think this happens in January. So if we could do it before, that would be best.
What day did you say, Nicole? Was that Wednesday, the 10th?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I'm fine on that day. Is this something that could be done by work session, so we really wouldn't have to worry about other?
I would love it if it was done by work session, if that's agreeable.
I mean, that way we don't have to worry about live streaming and do all that. I mean, we can notice that we're going to have it and individuals can participate if they wish, but it's not
Great.
really a public hearing as such.
Great. That would be marvelous.
Jordan, is staff okay with that on doing it on the 10th of March?
Yes, sir. Yeah, we can make that work.
And Ms. Sternberg, are you available for the design review part of that meeting on the 10th?
If we do it under work session, if someone can't come, that doesn't hurt us with regard to a quorum.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you now better.
Ms.
Now better.
Berenberg, Ms. Berenberg, are
Yes.
you available on the 10th?
I am available on the 10th, and I would be happy to do a little segment on design review.
Vicky,
Thank
can
you.
you define little?
20 minutes, does that work?
I'm just kidding you.
20 minutes or less, how's that?
One last thing, I bungled part of my answer to Ms. Cross's question. So let me reiterate, it would be really great, I think, if the board members, if we could all put some time into processing all the things we talked about with CLGs and coming up with any partnerships, like whether it be citizens that expressed particular interest in things that we mentioned in our old work plans. So any outreach to any partnerships and maybe timelines. And if not a timeline, then a ranking of priorities for the remaining work plan line items that were not met last year. Does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions about why I want to have this work session? Okay, all right. Thank you guys very much. Do any other board members have any business for tonight? All right, do you have a motion to adjourn?
I'll move.
Second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Thank you all for your patience.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Jordan. Have a good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Good night.
Good night.